we're seeing. So there's like abuse inflicted by peacekeepers upon like civilians. And that's like that's like hard to monitor and hard to keep people accountable from. On the opposite side, also like peacekeeping personnel, although are technically not supposed to come under attack in the regions, there's technically supposed to be like protected in the sense that they're because they're there to like keep peace, rather than actually involve themselves in any armed conflict. But they still suffer actual like real attacks from people that perhaps don't disagree with them. Um, yeah, so solutions potentially could be ways of training and prevention in these response mechanisms, like what to do when things happen, the ways that we can like assess UN peacekeeping mandates in countries and like crises, like creating a rubric to understand, to assess like how a peacekeeping response would happen. So something that's probably more structured and specific. Topic B, peaceful uses of outer space. So I think space is like, I mean, space is very open. There's a lot of things that's very new and still hasn't happened, like discussing how we should cooperate in terms of space exploration, in terms of like different countries claiming land, like sorry, not land, like areas in space, like planets, stars, comets, like materials, um, especially like mitigating space debris, which is becoming increasing bit of a problem, especially with the privatization of space, which is also something you can consider about, is like not only like the country act and like national actors, but also like sorry, national government actors, but also like private actors. Like you can think SpaceX and Elon Musk, especially when they become very, very powerful. Yeah, so interesting. And especially with the rise of space tourism, how do you regulate that, ensure the safety of people, keep people accountable? Like if you crash, if a like a US space tourism like shuttle crashes into like the China satellite, like how do you arbitrate? Um, Something like that. And I think big part of the UN is like trying to like have peaceful resolutions instead of war. So like how does that how do we resolve this without ending in like a war with a war and like actual like other deaths, innocent people dying, and a lot of like problems. So definitely trying to understand what are like trying to like create mechanisms to deal with problems that arise in space. And yeah, and like how we can use like how we can ensure equitable access to space resources, especially since like space has been quite limited in terms of access to a few select, like very developed and rich nations. Like, how do we allow other nations to access space and ensure that it is equitable and that like these like powerful like these few powerful nations don't have a monopoly, or like maybe it's fine and maybe free for all is like the mandate we want. But I think something that you'll have to decide is what position you're going to take on that. And like you might like want ensure like you agree with equitable access. I think there's still a lot of questions. It's like, how do you do it? Like, I think the big question that needs to be answered for both these topics is like, it's great for you to come up with an opinion, a stance, but really, really trying to understand like how you're going to do it will really differentiate from other people. Like, what are the actual mechanisms needed? And being very specific about them is probably what's going to differentiate you from like other delegates, your block from another block. Because some things maybe aren't really that like controversial, for example, but the ways you can solve these like problems like can be very, very different from one another. And hopefully that can keep everything very interesting and debate engaging. Yeah, that's what I have so far. Are there any questions? You can just put in the chat. Oh, you can just put in the chat and I can see it. Oh, the chat. Oh, wait. I think you can just. Oh, hmm. Wait. I think you can just use. Sorry, when I say chat, maybe we mean Q&A. Let's use the Q&A box then. I can see this now. So if you have any questions, you can put it in the Q&A box. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. This is a great question. How do double delegations work? Okay. So SPECPOL is a double delegation. So that means each country is represented by two people. And hopefully, you know that is considering committees like a couple days away from starting. But um, so basically, first day, you will say in double like as a double del in like in the committee room. So you two will sit together for speakers list, where for the first speech on speakers list where like you try and like do a speech on convincing the committee to vote for one of the topics. I'm fine with like two people both coming up and like each doing a speech. Like not each doing a speech, like this is like when you can like two people can like help and do one speech together. Um, I'm fine with that. And then there's like an unmod, and there'll like be some mods and unmods the first day, whatever we can fit in. But those mods will all those that entire day, first day, first session on the first day, is all gonna be like two people together in one room. And then on day two, through the rest of the committee, we'll be doing something called in room, out room. So you won't like people, someone will motion in room, out room on the second day, second session also. And essentially, one delegate will stay inside the room to do speeches, and one delegate will go outside the room to work on their resolution or draft resolution slash working papers with the block. So they will one person outside will just like write clauses, organize the block with the other like halves of the delegations in their block, and just like sit down and just write and talk. So we'll be, and then the inside, I'll just be running normal mods. And so this is during the mods, by the way. So I'll be running normal mods and people will just speak, talk about clauses, talk about things they want to write and see, etc., debate. And then when there's an unmod, everyone will go out. So like your double dells will like join together again. And I mean, they don't have to stick together, but they'll be together again and they can do whatever you want. You can catch up with your other Dell to understand like what's happening, etc. Because inside the room, you're not allowed any technology. So you can't like you're not supposed to be communicating with your Dell outside the room. The unmod is like when it's time for you to catch up with your partner and figure out what's happening. And then also like write more. And then when there's a mod again, one person has to come back to the room. So essentially at all times, there can only be one person in the out room and one person in the room in a room. You can switch but in like within the mod time, moderated caucus times. So essentially um when you double del, like you can just like run in and be like let's can we switch? And then your partner can go out and do out room and you can do speaking. Like you can be inside doing the mods again. So And that's like that for the rest of the committee. So that's kind of how double delegation works. You're mostly apart. One's doing speaking, one's doing writing, and you come back together during the unmod to discuss. Yeah, and like people can follow up. Okay. Would the directors be looking forward to problem-based mods first, or would they prefer to move directly to solution-based mod? Okay. So definitely, I would definitely look at problem-based mods first, especially on the first day, because we need to dissect the problem and try to understand like what as a committee are we valuing? Like, are we really like focused on equity concerns? Are we focused on humanitarian aid concerns? Are we focused on national security concerns? Like, or sorry, not national, like security, international security concerns. I think this is a like talking about fundamentally what is wrong and like with the problem and like in terms like the angle is really helpful for people to decide like kind of what blocks they want to join with because you should probably block with people who like you have similar fundamental like values with. Although like I think solutions are always like valid and helpful. They can maybe be too specific on the first day. So, but I think in general, like discussions should be talking about problems and like pointing out contradictions and issues with other people's solutions and like proposing your solutions. But fundamentally, I think your paper should be more solution based and your mods should be talking about problems more and advocate and then advocating for your solutions. Okay, itinerary for the whole day. Um, I don't have the itinerary on me, but I'm sure it can get sent. I will ask about this separately with my side of people. So yeah, I don't have that on me, but I'll make sure that gets sent properly to you and that it makes a lot of sense. I think broadly from what I know, there's like a session on the first day, there's like a couple sessions between like day 2, day 3, and then like final session day 4. But don't quote me on that. Um, yeah, I'll just make sure that gets sent to you later. Okay. A working paper, what are things to focus on? Okay. So things to focus on in a working paper is definitely like is the solution you're proposing? So you want to write many clauses discussing the financial concerns, like is your solution going to be funded? So there should be something there. You should have some sort of like probably committee overseeing the work being done and probably like answer questions like what does success mean, right? Like what are the things you're going to do and like how are you going to assess the success of it? And is there like a short-term plan? There's a long-term plan. Um, Also like what are things that are going to do like you can like probably see like categories. So you have economics, so like the financing and everything. You have like kind of the social part. So how are you going to ensure it's like socially equitable or like bringing um social good to the world, society. Like I would say social cultural like probably mixed together as a section in order to like understanding sociocultural impacts. So I'm thinking like the UN peacekeepers, like oh like maybe like can you do like cultural trainings, but like how would that look like? And you can expand on that. So I think being specific and then developing each of these sections, social, cultural, economic, like security wise, like safety and security. There's like a wide variety of different sections that you like angles you can look at. But I would think of like bringing in a bunch or developing one really thoroughly and one or two very thoroughly and coming with very specific ideas. So you want to write a fleshed out solution. You want to have like your preamble, though that's less important than the operative clauses. Your working paper is a draft resolution just pre-merger. So when I say working paper draft resolution, they like kind of mean the same thing. The draft only thing is the draft resolution is written after all the working papers are done, where like you're merging with other people's working papers as well. And that's like just a more edited formal version. The working paper just needs to be like a rough draft of your specific solutions. So like focus a lot on content and getting as much content written as possible. Yeah. Any more questions? Or like follow up if I didn't answer fully? Any more questions? We can talk about anything. Ooh, what are blocks? Great question. And like, yeah, once again, it's like example, like this is like a time where you can ask any question. There's no such thing as a dumb question, but blocks is a great question. So blocks, actually spelled BLOCs, are in the real world like alliances between countries. Um, so you can see like there's like set ideas of like blocks of like the Western bloc like refers to like the Western nations as an alliance. I mean the EU we could say is a bloc, etc. So it's like basically alliances between countries. Like broadly, blocks can be created like formally, like with the EU, but also like informally, like when we refer like culturally as like the Western Bloc, because they have usually like a similar position on national security issues, etc. So like people talk about like the Western versus the Eastern blocs, etc. But for Model UN purposes, still does mean alliances, but specifically, from in terms of like the mechanism is that the first day of committee, first session of committee, um you will form like alliances with people. I think in general you want to kind like try as much as possible to align with your country. Like it's probably unlikely to see um the US and Russia aligning, for example, right now. I think it's doable. I think it's fine and possible if you're able to argue that it makes sense within your foreign policy, but definitely like make sure what is written on your sheet of paper, on your like working paper and draft resolution, working paper specifically, kind of like supports your country's foreign policy initiatives and the values that they go for. So, yeah, blocks essentially will be a group of countries. I would say this is not a hard limit or number, but a block will be like 6 to 10 to 12-ish countries or like delegations in Model UN per working paper. The number will be like much more specific once we get to committee because like we like to keep all the blocks around like the same size to ensure equity, but it'll be like somewhere in that number, I would say. And these are the group of people that you'll become like really close friends to, hopefully, and that you'll work together to write your working paper with. And these people you kind of figure out by the end of first session, beginning of second session, really by the middle of second session, regardless of what day it is, where you'll like this is like the block that you sit with and that you talk with, that you really write with, and you really stick with that block. You don't like leave that block after you write the working paper. And this is the block that to award with, you really want to demonstrate that you lead within your block. This is also the block that you'll choose within to like choose Q&A and presentation for authors panel for these working papers. And then when you do mergers, you'll merge with like one, hopefully one other or two others, max blocks, where you will merge your working papers together. And this means like putting them not just like copy pasting one on top of the other, but like integrating clauses together to ensure like no repetition, things don't contradict, etc. So facilitating that merger to create one draft resolution from two or three working papers, most likely two, is like part of that. And that becomes like your bigger block, like your new block. And yeah, so that's kind of what a block is. Let me know if you have a follow-up question on that. Right. This is a great question. What is the speech that has to be prepared for the first day? Is it related to the position paper? So the first speech that you can prepare, sorry, this is the only speech you're allowed to write before committee starts. And otherwise, anything else is considered pre-writing. And this is a speaker's list speech. And this is essentially the first speech shall be given on the first day of the first session, where you will propose to do one of the topics. So unintended consequences of UN peacekeeping and outer space. And basically, you will choose one of the topics and go, for example, we should talk about outer space because it's a broader topic that's more pertinent and more relevant and like more interesting because like XYZ. So you will write the speech to try and convince everyone else in your committee that this is the topic we should be talking about. And this is super important because when we prepare for committee, for me personally, I usually have like look at one topic and go like, okay, this is probably like I really want this topic to be spoken for, right? I like think about a really good speech for it. And then I probably like usually prepare this one topic far more than the other topic. Of course, there's been situations where the other topic gets chosen, and then it's like I'm out of luck. Sorry. It sucks for me, but yeah, oftentimes like by deciding a topic, writing a good speech for it, and like presenting it really well, allows you to like focus more in depth in your preparation of one topic over the other. But definitely prepare both topics because oftentimes it like things don't go the way you want it to go. Um, and yeah, oh, sorry. I see the quick question is like, oh, it's an entire conference. Are we only going to focus on one topic on the one topic between the two? Yes, we will be focusing on only one topic, and that is the importance of your speakers list speech is to advocate for that one topic. Because after we finish speakers list, um, not everyone will talk in speakers list, but I will say a large amount will. And I think it just depends on the day of how many people are, how many delegations show up to committee. But yeah, so you're right. You do the speakers list, and then we all vote on. Well, I don't vote, but I'll facilitate the vote where all the delegations can vote on which topic they want. I'll go like those for topic A, those for topic B. Um, yeah. And in terms of related to position paper, not really, because in the position paper, you should definitely just focus on both topics and discuss both topics pretty equally. So it doesn't really matter which topic you're going to advocate for in your speech. I guess like in the end of your position paper, you kind of hint at it, be like, oh, like this is a really important topic because XYZ, but not that important for like you to mention in your position paper explicitly. Okay. During the mods, the delegates inside the room give speeches and what exactly what the form. Okay. Okay, so during the mods, the delegate inside the room gives speeches about like the block position. So like what is the delegate outside in your outside room like working on? Super important, which is why you need to be really in tune with your block and your partner and catch up, especially during the unmods understand what are new clauses my part has written. Like what are we like as a delegation really focusing on? Like are we talking about like economic consequences of peacekeeping? Like are we really big on that? And making sure you really discuss and make sure you advocate for that inside committee. It's basically an opportunity for me, like who's directing and like watching you guys speak to kind of understand, oh, like what is happening? Like what is the dynamics? What are people trying to advocate for? And speeches are a great way for me to like figure out like what you as a delegation um are focusing on. And it helps me also like assess like what have you written, because sometimes it's not very explicit like, oh, what are your ideas, what are other people's in your blog's ideas. But when you do speeches I can go like, oh, so this is like, I don't know, like this is South Sudan's like idea about like these public-private partnerships, etc., within the region to fund this thing. And this is a really great structure. And it seems that this delegation from South Sudan, like representing South Sudan, really knows what they're talking about. So that's kind of like how the mods are really used to demonstrate sorry, everyone in your committee, um, what for example, your delegation of South Sudan stands for. So also good for when people are doing mergers. People go like, okay, like South Sudan's block is like really focused on economics, and that'd be probably really good for my block as well. So this is a great way for other people to understand like what are other blocks talking about and what are other delegations speaking about, and they can work together to discuss solutions, etc. And then two, for me, to better understand what your delegation stands for, what your delegation specifically values, and what your block values. So, like differentiating yourself within your block. And I think really good speeches that are impactful, they're empathetic, they're emotional, they're passionate, inspiring, even are a really good way to differentiating like delegates in terms of like assessing awards, etc. Yeah. Let me know if that wasn't, if you have some follow-up question. Really great questions so far. Keep them coming. Will we do only problem-based mod? Oh no. There'll be mods talking about like, oh, like a top though I wouldn't look upon this like as like a very common mod, but there's like mods about like discussing working papers, for example. Like people might go, oh, like motion for like a 10, like a 9-1. Sorry, that's like definitely on mod probably at least 15, like a 15-30 minute, 30-second speaking time mod about positions of like the blocks, and people will talk about like their block positions, etc. So really like I think it's up to the delegates to decide what they want to talk about in the mods. I definitely look favorably upon probably a good mix of solution and problem-based mods, with probably more problem-based mods in the beginning when people are still trying to figure out like what solutions and what blocks they're trying to go into, and it's probably in the middle when people are deciding like what mergers they want to do. And then within, when we're trying to discuss working papers and like trying to explain and advocate for our solutions, definitely like more solutions, talking about solutions about like why your solution is better than everyone else's solutions, for example, or why your solution is like better for this part of the problem as opposed to this other part of the problem. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Feel free to ask clarifying questions. What's a typical time designated to speeches? Oh, this is a good question. I personally, in like my experience, is I see for GA speeches, I will usually see like 45 seconds to 1 minute, probably 30 seconds to 1 minute. I rarely see longer than 1 minute speeches. It gets really difficult, I think, to improvise speeches past 1 minute. So, but I mean, if you want a motion for a 1 minute 30 speech, 1 minute and 30-second speech, and people pass it, fine by me. But I would say the typical time people like to speak for is about 30 seconds to 1 minute. 30 seconds for like maybe like a shorter, like faster, more specific mod, and then like 1 minute for like a broader time. And then for Q&A and presentation, those times are motioned, and like they can be like 5 minutes, like presentation, like 3 minute Q&A. But yeah, so but like around those times. And then probably a total mod time I probably look favorably upon. I think really depends on the number of delegations within the committee. Like I would never approve a mod that has like more than, like for example, there's 60 people in my committee, would never approve a mod with like 60 speaking spots because that's just a lot for us to get through, or like, but I would probably approve like up to like 20 to 30 people max within the mod to speak, and less is fine as well. So yeah, probably close to like 10 to 15 minutes max for a mod. When are supposed to give solutions? So your solutions are supposed to be presented within your speeches probably by like second day. Like as soon as blocks start forming and you guys start writing, you guys can talk about solutions. And you guys can talk about solutions first day as well. But I would just like stay away from being too specific, because technically you can't pre-write your clauses. So you shouldn't be like pre-writing these like specific solutions and structures that you have. So you technically should not be talking about these solutions day one. So probably like day two, middle of day two is like when you talk about specific things, because you've now actually written them and discussed them within your block. And then like I mean like finally your solutions should be presented in your working papers and your draft resolutions, which is like by the end of like by the middle of the conference and then the end of the conference. How do you grade a delegate? I think definitely areas I think about is like unmods. Like what is your like present what is your leadership style like in the unmod? Like are you obviously a leader in your block? Um like demonstrating that like you're like organizing the team. This doesn't mean like intimidating people or like forcing people to do things, but that like you are leading with like a natural like leadership and have like charisma to convince people about topics and like ideas that you have. And then in speaking, definitely like are your speeches like interesting? Like are they like on topic? Are they like engaging? Like when you speak, do I want to look and listen to you? Am I like interested in what you say? Is it new? I think is very important. Like, don't want people just to like repeat other people and what they're saying. Repeat what other people are saying. Like, are you bringing something that's interesting and new to the debate? Like also like style. Like, are you using different tones? Is there emotions? Like, what kind of hooks are you using? Is it interest? Like, does it catch my attention? So kind of really being creative with your speeches is really helpful for like that engaging part as well. What else? Oh, quality of your clauses, I think is super important. So I look at what you've written and I go, these are good ideas. This is well written. You evidently have thought about the who, what, where, when, why for this clause, etc. Those are really important aspects to this look at when I'm grading a delegate. Okay, how long a general speaker's speech is supposed to be? They're supposed to be about a minute, I would say. Usually we motion for 45 seconds or a minute. Who can talk to present in that room del or the in-room del for presentation? For presentation and Q&A, both, it's always only one of the dels. You never go two as a pair. So like, for example, me and like my friend Matri, we're double delling. If we were doing presentation, it'd be only one of us. In terms of whether it's the out room or the in-room del, I would say that the person who knows the paper best should probably be on Q&A. So I would say it depends. It could be the in-room or the out-room del. But oftentimes I probably see more so the out-room del knows the paper more because they're like, we're out room and we're writing it. But I think if you like presentation slash Q&A twice, like if you authors panels for working papers and draft resolutions, you should have both people go on. Like for the first one, for example, your out room for like working paper authors panel, your out room del goes on, and your draft resolution Q&A or presentation, you should have your in room del go on, if that makes sense. Because I think it's good to show that both people in your delegation know the paper well and that both of you are strong delegates that can speak well. So that's, I think, super important too for when I grade a delegation is also that balance that both should be good. And you can demonstrate that by each taking an author's panel. But if you only do it once, like, I mean, just one of you who know it best. So yeah, like only one, but like important to note that for each author's panel, only one person can talk. Only one person goes up. Um, yeah, delegations will be graded as a whole. I mean, I guess like I wouldn't say it's like straight up like I grade one delegate like 2 points and I grade the other delegate 5 points and I added up to 7. I wouldn't say it's like that. It's like it's much more holistic and I think you're graded as a whole for delegations. Um, okay. How specific should a clause be? A clause, it should be like, I think like quite specific. I think as specific as you can get it. I definitely don't expect because you're not supposed to be doing um like research online, like during Outroom, like you should have all your research printed and brought with you already based by day one. So I don't specifically like ask you to like tell me like what's an example? Like, oh, go like send like 500,000 into 21 people to do this. Like there's like sometimes there's numbers like a lot of times like numbers like specifically I don't expect you to know. Like if things aren't common knowledge or like things that you brought on your research, then like you don't need to be more specific than that. But I would definitely, I think more specifically be specific about like who, what, where, when, how is more important. Understand like what kind of people or like specifically like what are qualifications that make an expert for this panel, and you can just like discuss that broadly. I think as specific as possible would be great, but understanding the limits of like not being able to research within committee on the topic, I think will like inform me on like what is common knowledge and what is like a reasonable amount of things for you to like have to know. But I think like what broad like what like a bad clause would just be like, oh, invest money into corn markets. Like, okay, but like who's doing it? Where you're getting the money? Like, what is the corn market? Like who are you investing in? Like, et cetera. Like, how are you gonna invest it? Like, are you gonna send people to do it? Like things like that. Like you can be more specific about, like, for example, like maybe like you don't have to list like specific companies that you're gonna invest in because it's probably very difficult for you to like think of that off the top of your head. Um, and then I mean, you can think about it like on a sheet, like on a like Google, like on a document, like a Google document. If you're writing in like 12, 11 point font, you're probably going to like a clause will be writing like will be like a quarter to a half to like a full page long, kind of just depending on how impactful the clause is. But like you can go like one dot, blah, and like subclause A, like one A, one B, one C to like get more specific within the clause. Okay. If we bring in committee relevant to the topic in our research, can we use them in our solutions? Yeah, yeah. You can definitely bring research into your solutions. I would just be our rules on pre-writing is that you can't bring in clauses. Like whatever you write, you bring into your research cannot be in the form of a clause. Like one, invest like money in corn markets, for example. Like you can't write that into your clause, but you can do like research on corn markets and be like, I don't know, like maybe you do research on corn markets and you look at like these big corn market companies within your research. So you can bring that in, but you just can't like copy paste clauses from your research into the working papers. Yeah. Any last minute questions? We have 1 minute left. So no pre-writing clauses. Yes. You cannot pre-write any clauses. It's just to ensure equality for everyone. Because like when you get there, I want to see people like writing and like actually discussing, thinking, and like bringing in other people's ideas into their clauses. So definitely no pre-writing, only research and your speaker's list speech. Any other last minute questions? If not, we can end. Thank you so much for coming. I'll see you very soon. Bye.